This isn't your soft launch. This is the hard launch, where we talk about what it takes to build love, businesses, and everything in between.
It's such a pleasure having you on the pod. I'm so excited to chat and talk all things wedding and this new chapter in your life. Thank you so much for coming on and doing this. I can't wait to get into it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here.
Awesome. So I know that you spent the first kind of beginning days of your career as a journalist. Talk to me about that and what kind of drew you into that world.
Yeah, so I think that I mean, as long as I can remember, I wanted to be a on-camera red carpet reporter. Kind of through like middle school, I was super into American Idol and watching Ryan Seacrest and kind of like followed him to and became obsessed with him and Juliana just doing the carpets. And I that was like my favorite thing to watch was Joan Rivers on Fashion Police. And I started doing kinda like the school newspaper, and we had, like, a TV production class, and so I kinda started that through high school, and then, when I was choosing a college, it's interesting, my parents are lacrosse coaches, and so they know, like, you choose a school kinda based on, like, your sport. So you're gonna go to, like, the best school for lacrosse or the best school for football, whatever, like, try to make that there, and so I wanted to go to the best school for journalism and broadcast, and so, I ended up choosing between GW and Syracuse. I went to GW, was in their school media and public affairs, and I just, like, had that trajectory in my brain the whole time, like, I was going to do it, and it's funny because GW is such a, political education background. And so my education is actually really in like political journalism, um, which has actually been very helpful in my career, because everything's a little political. Lobbying and kind of figuring out like the biases and like the sides of things and like trying to stay really central to tell a story was like always just the biggest part of our education. And so and just the importance of, like, journalism honestly being, like, the 4th branch of government, and so I've always been very passionate about being a journalist, and right out of school, I started as an assistant to the editor-in-chief of Hollywood Life, Bonnie Fuller, and from that point, like, it was very much like a right place, right time thing, which is what everyone kind of always says about when you get to go on camera, like, somebody has to leave, and somebody left maybe, like, a week or 2 into my time as the assistant, and she was like, "You are like, have a background on camera, right? I feel like I saw that on your resume, like, why don't you go on?" And it just kind of happened like that, and so I dueled as her assistant and the on-camera reporter at Hollywood Life for about a year before just full-time doing on camera and being, like, our exclusive reporter. And from there, I would just, like, travel everywhere. I would go to, like, every carpet. And I absolutely loved it. I was out every single night doing something. It was, like, such a dream. And of course, like, everything kinda slowed down when COVID hit, and so that really changed my, like, perspective of the career and also just the journalism and media industry really changed, and so it wasn't it there was no longer, like, a Ryan Seacrest or a Juliana Rancic or a Joan Rivers that could, like, rise up. It became this really, like, influencer culture, and less about, like, reporting, and so I kinda took out.
That is such an interesting. I feel like that's the impact that COVID had on so many different industries, but I totally hear you with, like, the right place, right time, right? Like, that's so cool that that happened because I feel like that's, like, it's sort of a mesh of you putting yourself in the right opportunities and then having those opportunities, like, noticing and recognizing them and them happening to you and being, like, in the right spot to, like, get after it, right? And you were, like, right there when that happened. Um, Also, I have to say my connection to Ryan Seacrest and American Idol is that I stood in line and tried to audition for American Idol in San Diego, which not many people know about me. And I literally was the crazy one, like sitting there in a tent overnight with my mom because my dream was to be a singer. And I auditioned in a massive ballpark field of some secret in San Diego Anyways, I was a dream my dream was to be on American Idol. Yours was from the other side, but, it
Well,
all
I think I, like, wanted to be a singer, honestly, and I'm, like, not, like, the best singer, but I think I wanted to be a singer, and I was like, "Well, if I can't be a singer, then I'm gonna interview them." That was, like, really where the OG, like, mindset came from.
I love that. Oh my gosh, same origin story, but I instead spent my night sleeping on the floor in a tent in some San Diego ballpark to try to audition. That's amazing. What skills from, like, journalism and from that phase of your life do you feel that you've taken with you as you've become this entrepreneur and kind of entering into the next phases of your kind of professional career? Like, what have you kind of taken from that? And what do you, I know you mentioned storytelling, but what else was there really that you've kind of been able to kind of thread through the other parts of your career?
Yeah, I think that the relationship building was huge and is huge in what I brought with me from the kind of red carpet days because Hollywood Life wasn't a very well-known outlet, and it took a lot of and what they were honestly known for was being very gossipy prior to me getting there, and you know, when I said, like, things were a little political, like, publicists would be like, "No, we're not talking to Hollywood Life on a red carpet," because they had reported something bad about their client however long prior. So I would have to kind of lobby and like relationship build and make some promises and like show them that I really just wanted to talk to their client about their project, their art. I didn't care about anything personal and like create trust. And so building those relationships, now I some of those publicists are still close friends, and have helped, within this second launch of my career, and, like, I still am in contact with them and still, have friendships with them, and they still even try to offer me their clients. I'm like, "I'm not doing" if they're talking about weddings, I'll talk to them, but, like, I don't really need, to interview anybody right now about their movie coming out. I can't offer you anything. But that's kind of where that background really helped me in this next phase of my career. And of course, the social media aspect of things is just always being able to be front facing, talk to a camera, is really important.
Yeah, I feel like that's a huge deal now because you can't really be an entrepreneur without that, like branding and personal branding and being able to be in front of a camera. I had a friend say that she like wants to build and start something but doesn't want to be front facing or like in the kind of on camera, and I was like, I don't know how that's going to work in today's day and age because you just have to be. That's such a skill that you have to kind of fine tune. What was the moment that you felt you were ready to kinda move away from that and into this next phase? And, like, what was the, like, pivotal thing that kind of made you launch into the next phase of your career?
Yeah. So I think so Hollywood Life sold to another company in summer 2022. Um and I did not like the direction that the business was going. I also felt like the media industry had changed a lot, and I had been wanting to take a next step for a long time, but it's hard when you don't have like I never got an agent. I never wanted to move to LA. I wanted to be in New York, and I had started dating somebody. I got engaged, and so when Hollywood Life sold, I made a little deal with them and was like, "I will leave if you give me a nice package, and, like, we'll cut ties here because I just didn't wanna move forward with them." And so I did that, so it was a nice clean break, and I started having more conversations just about next steps in the industry. Do I get an agent? Do I go totally on my own on Instagram? Like, that's what everyone was doing at this point. That's People weren't hiring journalists, they were hiring creators. Um, and so I started doing some of my own stuff on Instagram. I started talking to some agents, and the feedback was all the same. You need more followers, you need more followers to get hired to do what I studied in college. And what I know I'm good at. So I didn't love that aspect of things either. I felt like that was just not what I wanted to be doing necessarily, and I didn't wanna be, like, sitting alone talking about the Kardashians every day as much as I love that. I felt like I needed a little bit more, like, brain stimulation, and at the same time, the world was kinda, like, returning to normal. I was planning my wedding. I was struggling with planning my wedding because I hated not knowing what I didn't know. I thought that it was really messed up that brides, like, come in and get, like, one shot at figuring out what they want for this grandiose day and really have just, like, trends and a planner they're paying to learn from. And I felt like it was a very lonely time when it didn't have to be. And so I was talking to a girlfriend who had built a community of which she does this community called City Girls Who Walk. Her name's Brianna Joy, and she built a big thing on Instagram during COVID too, doing like little workouts and stuff. And I was like, I kind of want to do something that has impact. I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur. I never ever wanted to start a business. Like I wasn't one of those people that was like, and later in life I'm gonna start. No, I was not. I was like, I want to work for someone, and that's it. And she was like, I feel like you could do this with wedding planning. Like you want a community. And I was like, you're right. And so I kind of like took the idea and ran. Like I didn't look back. Texted a girlfriend who has built businesses and built communities. I said, meet with me tomorrow. I need to like put this pen to paper. And we built it out. And we called it What Do I Do? And I originally thought that What Do I Do was going to be a, like, vendor bride connecting point where, like, we had really vetted amazing vendors that don't screw you over to, like, put in front of brides to kind of be able to ask the questions that you have without feeling like you are being, charged for the time or anything like that. And I that was, like, the original basis of it, and then as I planned events and as I built it, I actually was like, these brides are going to show me what they need, and what they really wanted was community, like, yes, they have a million questions, and yes, it's good to have, like, vendors around to answer those questions, but, like, they could ask brides those questions, fellow brides those questions and then get all those answers from them too. "Oh, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing. Here's a link to this. Here's a link to that." And they wanted the workout classes, like, they wanted to just, like, be in their influencer era, and that's what I saw, and I learned it my first big public community event because I was freaking out about the gift bags because 'cause I've been to a bajillion events. They give me a bajillion gifts in one bag, like AirPods and Ray-Bans and Le Creuset and all this, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, my gift bag, like, doesn't have that much stuff for them. It's, you know, like, these few beauty products and blah, blah," and they were like, I got a gift bag. Like, they've never gotten a free thing. These are, like, lawyers and accountants and, like, finance girlies, like, coming from their 9 to 5s to an event where they get free drinks and free embroidery and, like, get to mingle with other brides and, like, shop, and then they get a gift bag. They're like, "I've never been to something like this in my entire life for free," And so that was kind of the start of it, and that's how I started What Do I Do Brides, and it's also um, kind of how I made that switch. And I still like have my foot in the door in the pop culture space. I still love it. I still work with Meta on a lot of fun kind of like activations and things. But I've really it's been fun diversifying my content and like I like helping people and I didn't like that people were following me because they wanted the news updates. I wanted people to follow me because of me, and so I think it's been really way more rewarding than I ever thought it would be.
That is so cool, and I feel like that's really at the heart of every entrepreneur, or should be. Maybe not all, but should be at the heart of every
Yeah.
entrepreneur, just wanting to help people and, like, people seeing something in you that's inspirational or aspirational and finding value in that and, like, finding their own way from, like, kind of your you leading it and showing them your learnings, right? I think that's amazing. How did you approach building community in those early days, like those first few events? Because community is not easy to build, and we've seen a lot of brands do it well, but we've seen a lot not do it so well, right? Because it's not an easy thing to do, especially in the early days before there's sort of like brand awareness or credibility or like that big following. So how did you go about kind of approaching it intentionally, especially in the early days, and um, building out that initial early following or community for What Do I Do Brides?
Yeah, I think that because I was already engaged and because I was already posting about my wedding, I had like a nice basis of brides to be following me about, I started to push my content that way. So that was definitely a big thing. But when it came to just the business itself, the first thing I did was host an event with like tastemakers in the wedding industry. So this was really interesting because I didn't know anybody in the wedding industry. Especially in New York City, I was getting married in Nashville. So it wasn't like I was using New York vendors and just like pulled on them. I did, and I've said this on a podcast before. My friend Alex, the one that I called the day after I had the idea of What Do I Do, she was like, "The best thing to do is just DM people." And I was like, "No way. No way someone's just answering my DM, especially if they have a million followers. Like, I don't believe you." And she was like, "It's the best form of communication. Like, no one emails, no one really even texts anymore. Like, a DM goes a long way." And so I started DMing people in the industry, just being like, "Hey, I had this idea and I want to pull together a group of, tastemakers in the industry to talk about it and like why it's needed at this dinner party I'm going to throw. Do you want to come?" And everybody answered. And also, a majority of people were like, "Yeah, how can I help?" And so I created these cool, different relationships. I mean, I was out every single day and night in meetings, taking people to dinner, taking people to drinks to tell them about the idea and get them on board of just like believing in it and telling me like what they needed and wanted from brides, or if they were a bride, what they needed and if they felt the same experience as me. And I threw this dinner party that I said from the beginning, I said, "This has to be beautiful. It has to be Instagrammable. It has to be shareable. And it has to go online and have people be like, 'Whoa, what is this? And who did it?'" And so that was our first big event. It was a dinner party at Black Barn. It was so beautiful. Amanda Savory Events helped me pull it together with a bunch of amazing creative partners that she works with all the time, and she kind of like wrapped me into that world. And the gift bag was like sick and the guest list was sick, and we had like people there that weren't necessarily in bridal but could be. We had like a really luxury dentist who talked about teeth whitening and why it's so important to, keep up with your dental work and all the things she can do for you if you're a bride. And an embroiderer and just like cool, different, unique people that hadn't met either. Um, and now all work together, and that was cool for me. And I just think that it was very, like, it hit the nail on the head. It did exactly what I wanted it to do, and it was like an open forum. I had a microphone, and I asked people at the table, like, what as like a bride, what's your biggest pain point? As a vendor, what's your biggest pain point? Like, how can we work together to make sure that this doesn't, you guys are communicating effectively? How would you like to be spoken to? Planner, bride, what would make it, what's your biggest question? And like really opening up the floor to have it be a very uh, to show why What Do I Do Brides was necessary. And so that was my, like, first big event, and that got the hype up to then have this wait list that was for our first big community event. And so from there, it kinda, like, trickled on.
I love that. That's so thought out and intentional and kind of strategic in how you approach that first event. I think the relationship building is such a key factor because you essentially built the network of like industry people from nothing, given you weren't even planning your own wedding in that region. So that's just amazing, and I think speaks so much to like what works and what doesn't work and how you thought about it. I'm curious, like, how did you take what the output what it was of that event and even, like, the next couple few and really, like, create this sense of, like, people feeling like what they were sharing, what their pain points were, like, what they needed, like, that they felt heard and that they felt like you were kind of, like, acting on that, right? Like, how did you kinda take the output of that and move it into something that actually is impactful? And because I know What Do I Do Brides now has, different branches, right? Like, you have your podcast, you have various guides and resources, and so how did you kind of, like, move the feedback that you were getting into valuable content and, like, distribution of that
Mhm.
content?
Well, I think I started to learn about what these brides really needed and wanted, and they wanted and what they would show up for. So, like an in-person event, which I'm based out of New York, and so they were really only happening in New York. And I was getting messages from girls in Miami and LA and Texas, and they were like, "Come do something here, come do something here." And I wasn't I was about to get married, like I wasn't traveling. And I didn't have the capacity to do that or a team to do that. It was just kind of me building off of the people that I knew here and people reaching out wanting to do things. And at every event, I would do a panel. So everything would have a sit down with some sort of professional, whether it was a therapist or a workout trainer or a planner, and brides would ask their questions and like have this one-on-one time with somebody that they could really pick their brains without any financial exchange other than like they're here to help you. And I think that from that is what I learned. I would listen to like what the most commonly asked question was, or I would get DMs myself. And a lot of it was what to do when. When do I book this? When do I book this? When do I get my dress? When do I start doing my facials? And so the first thing I did was start and I know I'm not an expert. I think something that really held me back early was that like imposter syndrome a little being like I can't answer these questions. I haven't even gotten married yet. Like I don't know. And then you start to be like, "I'm a little out of my league here. Why did I do this? Why do they trust me?" And so that's where the podcast really came in because I was already doing the podcast with celebrities and wanted to continue to storytell and talk to people and interview people, but I wanted it to fit within this new brand. And I was like, well, why don't I just ask these professionals and, grab questions from brides that are in, you know, New Jersey and Massachusetts, et cetera, and be able to get those questions answered for them. And so that's where the podcast came. And then from that, I wanted something that was monetizable, honestly. My husband says all the time that I love giving away everything for free, which I do because I already think everyone's spending so much money on their weddings. But I was like, okay, this is like a fun, easy thing. So I wrote an ebook and I said I had to get married first and I needed to like absorb, I needed to go like start to finish through my wedding to be like, okay, now I feel like I can give you, the soups to nuts of like what you need to do when, whatever, because I just did it. So I wrote this like 50-page ebook that is filled with, and it's been approved and looked at by planners across the industry. It has timelines, it has budgets, it has um guest list, like ways to decipher and build your guest list. It has scripts for how to talk to your mother-in-law, to how to talk to your mom, to how to talk to your partner. It does what your planner it can't do and won't do because you haven't hired them yet, to be totally honest. Like this is for the bride that like day one of her engagement or their engagement is like, I don't know what to do. My dad, it told me this is my budget. And then they said I have to get married here and because this is like what happened to me. And I have no idea what I want to do. And like, I need something to look at, right? So it's very much that what do I do moment, like, it goes right into your hands, um, and
I
so
feel like
that
every bride's gone through that moment. Like,
yeah,
it's just like, it's the beginning part, and you just you're in that, like, "Where the heck do I start? I have no
right,
idea how to do this," because you've never done it before.
right, exactly.
Yeah. Did your dad say you had to get married in Nashville? Is that how you guys picked
No,
Nashville?
no,
Oh,
no. I was told it was, like, the night I got engaged, and my parents and Rich's parents were so excited. They had been waiting, like, they had known about this plan, I guess, for, like, a few months, and so they had already thought things through, and, like, they just kinda all came at me at once with, like, "Here's your budget, by the way, and also you can't get married in New York City, the taxes are too high," and, like, da 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 da, and da 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 da, and this is our vision, and, like, here's your and I was kind of like, "Whoa." I didn't even know I was getting engaged today. And so it was just a lot all at once, and, like, I think that I was, just immediately up in the middle of the night building a guest list because, like, the next day, I hadn't even gotten my, like, engagement photos back, and I was, like, writing out a guest list, and no one should feel that way, like, you should really be able to enjoy your engagement and enjoy the process. I mean, it's stressful, of course, like, you're building a huge, huge event, and you don't get a rehearsal for it, like, at all, but there's things that could and should be easier.
100%, and I think what gets often overlooked and underestimated is the family dynamics part of it, which starts at the beginning when a parent says, "Here's your budget," if that's what's going on, if they're, sponsoring the event, and, like, or opinions about where, opinions about when, opinions about how, and to your point, a planner can't help with that, right? Like, that is oftentimes on a load that usually the bride, has to carry and navigate, and it is, like, very much a live part of the planning journey that is quite impactful to, like, how much you're either gonna enjoy it or not enjoy it.
Right, and it starts, like, day 1.
Day
It
1.
starts at the beginning, and so you have to set the boundaries, and so this helps you do that.
Exactly, exactly. What is your biggest advice to brides who are starting out or even maybe, like, a little bit into the process? Like, what are some misconceptions that they might have, and what advice do you have for them as they're starting out?
I definitely think to get the engagement starter kit, not just saying that because I wrote it, but because it's, like, what I wish I had, because it helps you, and this is to the point of, like, what they should, be thinking and just common misconceptions, like, it helps you get back to the root of your wedding day, which is, like and in turn helps you make every decision going forward for your wedding day. If you can come back to this starting point, which is, what do I want people to feel when they walk into my ceremony? What do I want people to feel and
Yeah.
remember when they walk into my reception? What do I want them to say about me and my partner 10 years from now? Not like, "Oh my god, the peonies that she had were, like, so beautiful and expensive." Like, "And that charger plate, wow." Like, no, what do you want people to feel and remember? And I think that when you come back to those, like, choice words that you figure out on day 1, every decision is way easier. Like, "Oh, I want romantic candlelight because I want people to feel the love when they walk in the room." Easy. That matches, right? Or, um, you know, I think that, like, when it comes down to your budget, like, trying to alleviate some of that stress because you're like, "You know what? Like, are florals down my aisle really going to make that big of a difference? Or is it more important to me to have a photographer there for 10 hours capturing the whole event because I want to remember and, see everybody I love in one room together from start to finish? Really, like, thinking about your budget in a way of coming back to where you really what you really care about. Like, if you care about just how it looks, then, like, great, but, like, if you care about your love, like, people walking away being like, "Wow, like, they're really in love, kind of those, like, intangibles, your vows, the, you know, music choices, the speeches, like, really focusing in and honing in on, like, those things, I think are really important.
Totally. I think, like, everyone needs to go through their budget and put their own weight on each line item and, like, align on that with their partner because everyone has different values, to your point, and, like, might value, like, photography more than, like, maybe the floral arrangements, and, like, you have to kinda, like, put a weight assignment on each line item or each, like, piece of the budget so that you are really understanding, like, where your valuables are and what you wanna really invest, like, time and money in. Also, I think, like, people always say like, "Oh, the event is for you," and it's like, it's more about yourself and like what you want, which I totally agree with. I agree with in some way, but in some way, I also think that like having gone through the experience, like you want to create an experience for your guests because your experience should be, or a lot of times is directly connected to like how comfortable and how much your guests around you are enjoying the environment, right? So I feel like you do have to think about it as sort of like this interconnected overall experience between like what is the experience and feelings that you want to have, but what are the experience and feelings that you want your guests to have so that you can see them enjoying it. And in turn, you yourself are enjoying it even more because you get to enjoy it together. So I feel like you have to think about it holistically and like really start with like, what are the feelings that your guests want to have? What are the you want your guests to have? What are the feelings that you want to have? And like what makes sure that like everyone in that room is enjoying themselves to the maximum capacity, which is
Right.
hard to do, but it is where
I
you have to
like
start.
I teetered the line in a few of those things. The first is that I was the bride that I was like, I'm not putting weight on anything. Like everything, I want the maximum of everything. Like I don't want to just have like, you know, small flower arrangements, but, like, flowers are important to me, like, my mom would be like, "Everything's important to you, like, everything's important to you," which was true, and I went to I talked to somebody yesterday who was like, they spent $750,000 on their flowers, and the food and drinks sucked, and, like so, to that point, I will just say, like, if you can space it out, you should space it out, like, I actually am not a believer in, like, going balls to the walls on one vendor item and then, like, forgetting about everything else. I actually think and then leans into your guest experience to have, like, a really great across the board event. But on that point too, I yes, I think that the event and the wedding is just as much for the guests as it is for you, but try not to get so hung up on things for guests. Like, yeah, I just remember, like, my parents being or, Rich's parents maybe being like, "How are people gonna get from the airport to the hotel?" And you have to be like, people are smart. Like, they've been living on this earth without your direction for them for, however many years. They can get an Uber, and if they really can't figure it out, like, I don't know. That's kind of on them. You know what I mean? There's things that, like, you can only do so much. Like, make sure your website is good, make sure you maybe have transportation day of, but, like, you don't have to babysit your guests, and that stuff is for you. Like, that's where you're like, I'm hands off now, you know?
I totally agree with that. Let them be adults, and those are usually things that don't feed into, like, their overall emotion of, like, the or feelings of the event because, like, they should be able to take an Uber, to your point, from the airport to your venue and figure that out, and that should not impact their overall emotion or feeling towards that day, but, like, when they walk into the room, that wow factor and food is definitely something that they're gonna remember, and, like, that is where you wanna, like, create the emotional impact because food directly ties to how they're feeling. The environment directly ties to how they're feeling, so, like, those are things where, like, for sure you should, like, kind of spread it out and think about what will they remember, what will, what will
Having
really
enough
impact their
room
feel.
on the dance floor, that was, like, my dad's big thing. He's like, "You don't want too small of a dance floor." Like, there's things that people don't really think about that are like, "Oh, that's more important to me than, this other random item I could have, a coffee cart."
100%. Having the room feel too empty or too crowded, right? Like if the room is not the right size for the guest count or who's
Yeah.
showing up. I mean, all the things, those things directly impact how people feel in that environment and in that space. And I think you have to start there and think about that. What do you think it was about sort of like your bridal community and kind of like what you were building and what you've created that really like stuck with brides, right? Like, was it that feeling that they have people to lean on? Was it sort of the resources that you were providing? Like, what do you feel made it really sticky and kind of stand out in a time when, maybe there were, other people creating communities or like other resources that they could have kind of leaned on? What do you feel like was something that was really differentiating and like really made it sticky for What Do I Do brides?
I think that it was by a bride for a bride. Like, I knew exactly what they were feeling. I knew exactly what they were going through. I was going through it with them or just went through it. And they wanted almost, I call it like a bridal big sister. And so I would have like recent brides who got married, like be in there too, and they could ask questions. And it was that like personal connection of, excuse me, of them not feeling alone. I do think it can be a really lonely time, like, your partner doesn't get it, and your friends, if one's also engaged and getting married, like, they might be doing their own thing. It might be a little uncomfortable talking to them about your own wedding because they're stressed with theirs. If you don't have a sister, you don't know. People get over it. You don't wanna bother your friends and your people with your wedding stuff because there's quote unquote "more important things going on in the world." Like, so it just kind of gave people this peace of mind of like, "Whew, I can sit here and talk all day to these fellow brides about like, oh, what's your mother-in-law saying to you?" And they're like, "Oh, I said this and blah, blah, blah." And oh, yes. And like, "Oh, I'm getting married at the Fajina next year in Miami too. Like, who are you using and who are your vendors?" And, kind of it just created, I mean, at the like basis of it, like a community. And now we have this big group chat, and that has been amazing for them to pop in and say, "Hey, like, what's everyone buying for Black Friday?" And then they all like chime in, like, "Oh, it's a great time to do this." And I can chime in too, but sometimes I don't even have to. At first I think I made myself the expert, and now I actually don't have to be. Like, they talk to each other, and send each other things. And so I just kind of oversee.
That's amazing. I feel like that's a huge milestone as an entrepreneur when like so much founder led, but you can actually step back and watch what you've built kind of organically continue on. What do you feel is like the future of wedding planning and even like content, bridal content creation, right? Which is something that you've obviously also been doing. Like, how do you see it kind of evolving in this new kind of era of technology and kind of the Gen Z wave of wedding planning? What do you feel is like the future if you could predict how things may evolve in the next 5 to 10 years?
Gen Z, like, scares me. I think that they have minds of their own in, like, all like, they are so unpredictable. Like, they could be some Gen Z kid could come in and be like, "I'm having 10 weddings on 10 different islands that I found on Instagram." And you'll be like, "Okay." And they're like, "And I'm planning them all myself." And okay. Yeah, I'm planning them with ChatGPT as my planner, and I don't need any help. And that could happen. Or the thing that I do love about Gen Z is that they don't really like take any BS. And so I do think that they are going to find ways around some of these prices and like the bridal tax everyone talks about. Because as we all know, things have gotten really expensive, and, like, when things get expensive, it pops at the top. What I do like to remind people when they talk about how expensive things are is that these vendors are small businesses. A lot of them are family-owned businesses, and they charge what they do because they need to make a living, and they're actually just paying for the resource that you're asking them to provide, i.e., like, flowers are expensive. So the florist isn't taking all of your money, like, it's to purchase the flowers, and everything, the vases and the this and the that to build, your creative vision. So I do like to remind people of that. But I think that this next wave, we're going to see a lot of creativity. I find Gen Z to be very creative. And I also think it's going to be very unique. I think we're gonna see a lot of small weddings. I think we're gonna go kind of back to those, like, pre-COVID backyard, really romantic, really personal, um, weddings, a lot of micro weddings I'm hearing about because people don't wanna spend the money. Um, or it's just, like, overwhelming and they're, kinda COVID kids and they're like, "I don't want, like, a big whatever, I'd rather buy a house or I'd rather go on a big vacation." Um, so I think it'll be really interesting. I hope that's I still think still think we're gonna get those big ass viral weddings, so, like, I don't think those are going away either. There's always gonna be a few of those for sure
Yes.
to keep
Those are
the
not
world
going
spinning.
anywhere. For
Yeah.
sure. What do you see as the evolution for What Do I Do brides as in the next 5 to 10 years? And especially as you're kind of entering this new phase of your life?
Yes. So I think what do I do? I've really enjoyed kind of separating myself from the brand in not a way of like me not being, the face of the brand and like talking about weddings and things like that, but in letting these brides really because what do I do brides is for every bride. It's not for me and my experience and sharing it with everyone. It's for all of them that want to know where they should go on their honeymoon or you know, they're just feeling really stressed and down and want some guidance on what they should be doing next. Like, and so by taking almost like the person out of it a little bit, like I'm always there and I'm always like around, but making it a brand instead of just like Allie's thing is kind of been cool for me to do and really make it like a business where it's sharing information, not just my wedding photos or something, you know what I mean? Um, and so I see that really pushing along. Right now we have the engagement starter kit. I would love to build upon that. I would love to figure out ways, right now our chat is on Instagram and I'm always trying to prove my husband wrong that I don't like to give away free things, but that is not monetized. But I don't want it to be because I don't think that brides should have to pay for more. But what I do think would be fun is to do something with the vendors by putting them in front of the brides and being that connector and kind of liaison. What's been fun for me too is that I have gotten into some planning because what's happened is when I've planned these events, the brides then come to me and are like, "Can you plan my shower? Can you plan this? Can you bring your people here?" And so while I say I will never plan a wedding, and I won't unless it is a micro wedding, and I want my weekend, so I'm not a wedding planner. I love doing showers. I love doing little luncheons, little, you know, um, when girls do like a bridesmaid proposal, tablescaping and like bringing in the ideas for that. I love. I have like almost bridal, like, concierge service where they can book with me instead of getting, like, a full-time planner. I will go one-on-one with them and kind of talk through things, and they can continue to book with me, as an option too. So, it's fun to, like, work with brides one-on-one and kind of help talk through their different scenarios, whether it's, like, helping choose a venue, which is annoying and terrible, build a guest list, figure out what they really want and their aesthetic, um, fill in some fun decor, help with their bachelorette. So there's like so many different kind of facets to things. And yes, I'm pregnant. And so I'm figuring out that next step of the business. If I want what do I do to really thrive though. And so I don't want to take away from that because it's being built. We're still in a building era, and I'm still figuring out how to expand it through different cities, not just having New York events. Like, if I'm able to get some bridal ambassadors, I've been working on that in the city, especially, when I give birth, like, having some of my brides be the ones running these events and, like, hosting and co-hosting and bringing people together. So if I can get that in other cities, that would be the dream because I want brides to be able to bring like their own together and do that, and they can. And so that's kind of what I envision. Moms and motherhood feels very similar, honestly, of like being thrown into something that you don't know anything about. Like you think you know, and then once you're in it, you don't, similar to weddings. So maybe there's something there, but there are a lot of resources for moms that I have found and I do enjoy following.
Yeah, it is definitely there are a lot of similarities. I feel like even building a business is very similar to going through a wedding planning process and having a baby. So like all these big kind of things are something you like push out into the world and you just are like building it, right? And those three things, there's so many parallels with that across the three of them. But I love that future for What Do I Do Brides. And I think like, first of all, congratulations on the pregnancy and this new era becoming a mom. And I think you're gonna find that there's again, like there's just so many parallels to like building businesses, having babies, planning a wedding, and even just like entering that chapter. Like there's just so many things that you can kind of pull through from what you've learned in the experiences that you've already had. But there are a lot of resources for moms, although there's still a lot of opportunities for better resources and more organized resources and aggregated resources. Having gone through motherhood, like being in motherhood and having gone through kind of having two kids, like there are resources, but there's always room for better ones. I feel like there's just so much that people need and need help with that there's never a shortage of like what you could build and create in this new stage. How are you navigating or thinking about navigating building a brand while entering this
Mm, chapter.
motherhood era?
It's funny when I first started What Do I Do Brides, I was like, if I don't do anything today, nothing's gonna get done for my business. Like, you're the one in charge. So, like, if you're not doing anything, nothing's happening. If you're doing things, then it's building. And so that's a scary thought. What I love about running my own business is that it really can be when I want to do it, I can do it. And that's what's great about the ebook being such like a constant source of promotion and like that What Do I Do Rise is never going to go away. That's what I love about the chat because they're chatting in there. Like they don't really need me. I will answer and I always do. And I'm constantly on my phone and I don't think that that will stop once I have a child. Well, it should slightly. Um, but it's funny, like I was on the phone the other day, we were planning an event with Bring Concierge and Little White Looks, and they were like, all right, let's look at the second week of February. Anyone have any big plans? And I was like, I'm giving birth, but like that's okay. And they were like, "Wait, what? Hold on, I write your" and I was like, "No, but, like, I'll send" like, just because I'm not there doesn't mean that What Do I Do Brides isn't present, which is the best part about the brand, I really think, like, it's again, that's why it was such a great pivot because I can send a 2026 bride to be influencer to represent What Do I Do Brides, and I can send a tarot card reader, say sponsored by What Do I Do you know what I mean? I don't need to be there. Um, even though I wanna be there and I love being present for events, like, it doesn't I feel like it's a great opportunity, honestly, to, like, open it up to this ambassador program, kind of like the brand Parallel, the, like, little, um sorry, my dog. Parallel is like the little vitamin packs, and they have this thing called the P pack, and they like offer. They're like, okay, who in in our P pack that's like all over the country wants to throw a mood board event for their local community in December? Here's the $500 budget. Like, go have fun. And so I think that having something like that and offering brides, I mean, not like they want to plan something else, but E for me, it would be a planned event where I have somebody.
Totally, just show up and represent, and you have the flexibility of going or not going. Exactly. I mean, I totally get it, like, it's possible I think, like, until you're in it, it's hard to understand how the juggle or the balance happens, not that there's ever truly a balance, but, I mean, I was building Gia while having 2 kids, and it is difficult by, like, no short like, for sure it's difficult, there's no arguing that, but it fuels your fire in a different way, and I feel like when you have when you're going through that chapter and that phase of life, if you have an outlet of building something else, it's actually quite beneficial for you and your mentality and kind of finding your way back to yourself. That's at least the experience that I've had. And I've always said, like, I don't know, I don't want to pause when I'm building my family. I want to actually show my kids what it means to build while I'm building my family, and that I don't have to choose, and that I can do both, even though there are such hard days. But it fuels my fire, and I get to have them watch that. So it's I'm excited for you that you're kind of getting to do both at the same time.
Yes, I know, exactly, and I do think that it's going to be a balance and a challenge and also something that is going to be a learning curve, just like anything when it comes to motherhood, I think. And truly, like you said, you don't really know until they're here. Like, probably with your second, you can, like, guess, but with the first, you just don't know anything.
Two quick rapid fire questions and then we'll wrap things up. What advice do you have for founders? I know we talked about brides, but what advice do you have for entrepreneurs and founders who are looking to kind of reinvent themselves, maybe pivot in their careers, given you've done pivots several
Yeah.
times now?
I would say, don't think of like, don't look into what it takes to build a business. Don't think about anything and just dive in, because the people that over research what it takes to build a business will never build a business, because I think that my blinders on and just me running with an idea was the best thing that could have happened, because and my husband says it all the time, like, if I followed, like, the rules of business building and got, like, a CFO and, like, a this and a that and had, like, HR, like, it's just you have to, like, fly by the seat of your pants a little bit or you'll never do it, and then you figure it out as you go. I know that's probably bad advice, but that's what I did, and you almost have to be, like, a little dumb in that business knowledge to be able to do it, because you have to be you have to lead with your passion. You can't lead with I think that to start a business, you can't lead with a business brain, because and strategy, because you're never going to figure out what your consumer actually needs if you're just like strategy, can't pivot, can't, you know, no, this is the idea. I don't care what they want. Like, I'm sticking with this, because sometimes your ideal, it doesn't work and they tell you that they need something else. And you're like, oh, I can do that too. And being able to adjust and pivot to what the consumer actually needs is where you're going to thrive in your business.
So critical. I totally agree. I went into building Gia coming out of a 7-year career in biotech, just purely out of my own wedding experience, and then I had planned also to kind of like get the planner side of the pain point coin, but I had no idea what even there are days now where I'm like, "What the heck was I thinking getting myself into building a software solution in this space based off of, like, almost no knowledge in the beginning of how to do this?" But it was that blind conviction because I was like, "I know that there's a need here. I know that I had a pain that so many others I've talked to had experienced," and that blind conviction is, like, what drives you because people who are paralyzed, like, analysis by paralysis, right? Like, they just don't know what is that me? I think that is. What is going on? Okay. That like analysis by paralysis is what stops you because you know too much and you're like, there's no way I'm going to climb up this mountain. So couldn't agree more. Okay. Last question. What has all of this taught you? Oh my God. I'm so sorry. Um, what has this whole kind of chapter taught you? And when I say chapter, I mean kind of moving through this like bridal era of your career into like now this motherhood era and kind of pivoting through all of that and what has all of that kind of taught you about yourself and what you're maybe something that was like surprising that you didn't know that you could even do or handle.
I think it's really challenged my focus and my ability to stay on course with the task at hand when there's so many other things that I also have to do and there's only so many hours in the day. So, I think in the beginning slash like kind of the middle of my um pregnancy, I very much kind of had like a moment where I was like, I feel like I'm being a half-ass friend, a half-ass wife, half-ass dog mom, half-ass daughter, half-ass employee for myself. um, and I'm just living life like half-ass because I'm like a half-ass mom, at this point, and I just don't feel like I'm doing anything to my full potential. And I had to really step back and be like, okay, I'm building a baby every single day. Like I'm building brains, I'm building ligaments and joints and nails and all of these crazy things. That's really important. Um I so that kind of takes my focus right now. So it was a pivot on focus and like letting myself and my body do that. Um and being like, "Okay, like, if not everything gets done today, that's okay." And really scheduling out my time and allowing myself to, like, rely on other softwares to help me. So, I like, doing social media was really important to me for What Do I Do Brides. Like, I wanted to have my hand on every single thing that was going up and live, make sure it was in my voice and was sending the brand's message across. And I was like, "You know what? I can't keep creating 7 days of content and reels and posting them and making these captions and all of this stuff. And then filming the podcast and making clips from those and editing them and doing it all by myself. Like I just can't keep doing things by myself. So I think that I hired a producer and that has been so I like tape my podcast, excuse me. I tape my podcast and I send it to her and I'm done. And she cuts my clips and she makes the intros and she does all of that for me. Amazing. So I like, kind of started to hand off. I got one of those, it's called like My Social Templates or something. She is like an amazing creator and she creates for businesses like templates, monthly templates for and ideas. And so I've just utilized these different and unique templates. It's helped the content a lot because I'm not like in a brain funk being like, what do I do next? How do I sell this engagement starter kit? 'Cause I'm not great at selling things. So I, really leaned into that. And I still build it. I still have a hand in it. I schedule the content now. I think it's some of it's honestly just like entrepreneurial learning and growing and being like, okay, if I'm not going to hire somebody to do this, like what's a way that I can make my life a little bit easier that the business doesn't need me so much and need my hands and time. And so that's where the chat really came in handy, where these brides are just talking to each other. And I don't need to be like creating conversation topics or like managing it. I can just be in there and like be part of the conversation. Um, the events, I gave myself grace with the events, doing them once a month instead of once every 2 weeks. I mean, that was crazy. Um,
That is a
yeah.
lot. And were those events all for What Do I Do? Like all the events you were doing?
Most of them.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Unless I was like hired to plan an event. Um, and just really prioritizing things right now, especially that like make money for my family. I think that that was like a big push of mine too, and really leaning into like learning about motherhood and building a community for myself too in this next era. Um, and bringing my followers along with that with me because a lot of them are on that journey too.
I think that's such good points. And it is part of like the learning and growing of being an entrepreneur. I mean, I'm a first time founder, right? And like learning how to create systems that create efficiencies for you as a solo founder and leaning on those systems and tools and resources that just speed up your processes. Like I just did an audit on like what systems are we using? What else is out there that we can use to like move us along faster? Because I mean, as founders, I'm sure you've had this experience, like you mentioned, right? Like we're doing the job of usually like 5 people, which are full time roles, and all of that is on you. And like nowadays, luckily, we live in an era where there are so many AI tools and different types of resources and tools that you can just find from other founders or other people more easily. So, um, I
That
think
know
like
better than you. That
that
was
know
my
better
thing,
than you. Yes.
like, I'm doing an event next week for a, brand called Horatio, and they are an HR, like, customer service for small businesses to hire them to be their customer service HR branch. And, like, it's brilliant because they I'm a small bit I'm not gonna also be my HR, I'm not gonna be my customer service. What if someone can't get their ebook downloaded and blah, 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 and what am I supposed to do? And I don't know, and you have Horatio there out of the Dominican Republic, figuring it out for you. It's
Figuring it
brilliant.
out for you. Absolutely. I think it's so important. I mean, I call on other founder friends and I'm like, "What are you doing? What tools are you using? What like systems do you have in place? Like how are you doing this? How are you doing that?" Because they have either maybe done it before, maybe they're a second time founder or whatever, but like they're maybe a little ahead of me or they just know a little bit better than I do in like certain areas. And so I think like having the ability to be open-minded to that and always kind of keeping your feelers out for like what else can you be doing to create efficiencies is so important in this journey. Um, well, I am so glad that we got to do this. Thank you so much for coming on. And it was such a pleasure connecting, talking, chatting, all things bridal era, motherhood era, all the things. It was so, so great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. And yes, everybody can, if they want an engagement starter kit, they can go on whatdoidobrides.com. You can follow me at Allie's Carbone. I changed that. Allie Carbone on Instagram and What Do I Do Brides also on Instagram. And we have you covered there. DMs are open if you all need anything.